And we are
We're live.
live.
Nice. Welcome.
That's good. Hey, welcome here, everyone. We have a few people already in chat, bunch of questions. My name is Brendan. Oh, this is so weird. I have myself just where's this
Please
coming from?
pause for technical difficulties.
No, we're good. Oh, there it is. I had this open in a different tab, and I was like, "Why am I hearing my voice delayed?" From oh my gosh. Oh, okay, good. Hey, we're back. My name is Brendan, creative lead on the project, joined by Derek, who is that direction. Derek's lead producer on Threshold, and then below is Luke, and Luke is our one of our game designers, lead game design on combat and kind of game design on other stuff as well. So, hey, how are you guys doing?
Doing great.
Doing pretty good. Exciting day.
Yeah. Yep. It's a day one. It's always equal parts awesome, terrifying, exhausting, all the things, all the emotions wrapped into one. And you know what? I wanted to get into one of the comments right off the top that has been a comment, and I'm gonna just I'm gonna dive into it. Here we are. Black Rose says, will there be another review of pricing? From what I've read in comments, several people have brought this up. Yeah. So just off the top, and this is an excuse, but games are expensive to make, like physically manufacture, and we think we've done a pretty good job of the value that's in the core box.
For sure.
And I know there's disagreements here or there about it, but I'd be happy to kind of walk through a lot of the decisions we made. We have 4 characters, a bunch of enemies, 3 dual layer regions with their own quests, renown cards, titles, a bunch of vocations with crafting. 50 hours of gameplay, which I actually think is kind of conservative. In some ways, we have a tester who he's put in 80 hours in the alpha, so it's not even
that's just the first region.
Well, it's not even the finished first region either, right? So it's a part of the first region, so it's a part of a third of the game that he's already put in 80 hours into, and so. I think for the actual value of what you're getting, it's and like there's a component count, which I think the value is quite high. The trays that we make aren't, they're not cheap. There's for you to table the game in 2 minutes. That there's a little bit of a premium. But for us, that's a valuable thing. And I recognize it's not easy. Price is a sensitive matter, especially these days. There's a lot of stuff going on, so totally get if Threshold might be priced outside of what you're expecting or budget. But I was looking at the price point. It's like, man, there's actually not a whole lot we can do if we want this to be a sustainable thing, right? For so myself and Derek we're employed by Open Owl Studios. Luke is an external designer that it's quasi employed, and it's interesting, right? Because it's like, okay, we're pricing these to cover costs, cover development, like it's a whole package, right? And so a lot of stuff in there. Yeah, and there's maybe some projects that are packed full of stuff that you might find cheaper, but also I can look across to I think we were just chatting before the call. I think Elder Scrolls is, someone wants to share with me the buy-in price. Is it $200, $300 for the core game? I think their new content, which is expansion, is the same price of our core box at the moment, and completely different games. But our game obviously doesn't include poker chips. Right, completely different games, but values such an interesting proposition. We don't have to belabor this. I don't know, Derek or Luke, if you have anything to add, but we don't have to belabor this. We can move on to other stuff.
No, yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot going into this game, a lot of content that, even though the page has a bunch, the quality of like having a bunch of dual layer boards, wanting to offer. I think one of the big things is, and maybe we could get into this a little bit other stuff, is having 4 players and wanting. I mean, we've been really committed to this idea of kind of this free flowing gameplay and a little bit of fluidity between player turns and allowing them to do things. So that opened the door to, like, we have some extra combat boards for each player. There's enough content that we're making sure that, when players gather their items, their builds, build their character decks, that there's a lot for them to do in terms of getting the components together and not have to worry about stepping on each other's toes. And you mentioned back to the trays. I think the trays are something that we spend a lot of time engineering. It's really important for us that this is a game that, as big as it is and as expansive as it is, we're really committed to that 2-minute setup and tear down.
2 minutes, not 1 minute.
Exactly.
2 minutes. 1 minute's too much. Or
no, I said 2.
Oh, okay, 2 minutes.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I think we've done it with Mythwind, kind of demonstratively there. We followed up a little bit in Storyfold with the system, and I think it's part of our ethos now. And we spent a lot of time thinking about those trays, popping those lids on, putting them back in the box, and then just removing it and getting to go again.
Yeah. Yep. One of my mindsets, like, hey, the best game is the one that gets played. That's a big one. Okay, let's do a little pivot change. The other kind of big question and topic of conversation has been around enemies. Like, hey, the enemies offered in the game, the variety. Hey, there's not enough enemies. Won't I get bored? Those types of comment. 40 hours. Am I like those things? Luke, I'm gonna lob this one over to you. You're the guy who designed these enemies. So I'm not throwing you under the bus right now. I'm giving you
that's fair.
I'm giving you the opportunity to outrun the bus.
Right.
So what do you got?
Yeah. No, happy to take the ball here. Yes, because I did design the enemies, and so I guess I'm partially to blame. No, I think what is, just going back to like content likewise, just for a bit, like I think what gets lost in just scrolling through a Kickstarter spread is sort of the depth of the mechanics, and sort of the replayability we're trying to create. So yeah, there's 12 enemies. I think the thing that easily gets lost is that I say easily gets lost, but we have the TTS available, and people are talking about this on Discord, that there's a blog post I wrote about it too, how each enemy has a deck of cards, and the deck of cards, here's a bunch of enemy cards right here. So visual aid. So let me just grab these guys. So one enemy has their stat sheet, and if that's all there was in the game, like this enemy has these stats. It does this. This is its attack. This is maybe its alternate attack. This is how much it defends with when you attack it. Like a really straightforward enemy system like that. Like, yes, you would want a lot of variety to keep that interesting. But one of the things I wanted to do was to almost sort of emulate a bit of Dark Souls combat or Souls-like, where enemies have moves that you're trying to learn. In my dev blog, I referenced I'm blanking on the name all of a sudden. The monsters. There's another board. Not Dark Souls. The board game. Well, there's definitely some Slay the Spire influence. But the idea that the enemy has a deck of its AI actions that it does, And those are like moves, sort of almost like in a video game, where it's this face down deck and you can learn what the enemy does as you play against it. And that can change over time. So, in the prototype that we have right now, like this enemy has, these 5 cards. They're going to be face down as a deck, and you can have a little bit of information about what they're going to do on their turn. But each of these is like a set of effects that it does. This one has a couple different effects to it. And the enemy performs those actions. You don't fully know what that's going to be, but as you play against them and fight them, you'll learn what those are. And that can change too. So that's the other thing that we're going to expand on more, as we develop the game. Like I said, right now there's only these 5, but I think we just unlocked stretch goals to add 4 more cards to each deck. We're talking about different ways that maybe the regions also could potentially add a card to their deck, or something you do. There's maybe a boss that you fight and you beat him, and maybe that means next time you fight him, he's stronger in some sort of way. So like the fact that each enemy has a deck of cards gives them more depth than just like, oh, here's a stat sheet. And that depth gives them a sort of sense of familiarity, but also replayability, where they can change and adapt in a way. So you might fight a thief in region 1 that has 4 different moves it can do. You get to the next region, and let's say it's a more of a seaside region. There's more open areas. Now all of a sudden it's shooting you from longer range. It attacks where it runs up and tries to steal gold from you. So that's something we can do to sort of evolve enemies as you play, rather than just enemies having sort of a static ability that is always face up, that you're always encountering and seeing every time you fight it. So we really hope there's sort of a depth to the enemies, and that's what we're trying to design for.
Yeah. And one other thing is
Kingdom Death. That was the game I was trying to remember.
Oh,
Kingdom Death has a deck system for their enemies.
You were kind of referencing Josh Kramer in chat asked about other games that have similar combat as this game. Kind of referenced it a little bit. Inspiration has been Slay the Spire, but Slay the Spire isn't kind of tactics, hex-based grid. It's an interesting, like, a lot of our inspirations are, it's kind of this interesting mashup, right? Because there's some inspiration behind with Unmatched when it comes to kind of our zone system. We take kind of some elements from like Marvel Champions or Gears of War, right? Where you use cards to play cards. A lot of kind of the effect stuff. You have like Slay the Spire vibes, but I don't know. For me, it feels pretty like, I don't want to say singular, but I don't know many games that kind of do all those things.
I think it is a very unique combination of a lot of familiar mechanics. And I think it's some of the things that we enjoy, the interesting card play that is, developed through your own deck building. This interest, the thing that Luke's talking about with the enemy AI, and kind of telegraphing moves and having a bit of a Souls-like feel where you can kind of strategize with, either as if you're playing alone or with your teammates. And you can kind of, and then with it not being pure hex, right? Because it is a hex grid, but it's not, we have, a lot of the mechanics are in your zone or not in your zone or in an adjacent zone. And then of course we play also with the hex spaces next to you or away from you. But I think it's just a combination of a lot of familiar gameplay mechanics that we all love in various games that kind of found their way into this system in a really good marriage.
Yeah. Great. Kind of to segue on the enemy sheets, Luke was talking about them. There are actually 4, I guess there's 2 double-sided sheets for each of our enemies. Because one of the things that we didn't want to do is, right, you're doing a lot of fighting. You might fight, 3 different kind of enemy families in one region, and then 3 different ones in other region. There's like the cycling that's happening, or like, a couple from these families, maybe the bosses from the Beast and the Sentinels. And so that's kind of evolving. So your enemy pool changes each region. Which is one thing, but then we also want to make sure that there's when you fight a masked imp in region 3, we don't want it to be as easy as it is in region 1, right? So we do change the base stats where we level them up, and you kind of get that sense of like, oh, hey, these creatures are, you know, growing and evolving as you are evolving and growing. And so lots of so that's, you know, kind of another element about the enemy stuff.
Yeah, just to elaborate on that, just, you know, I don't know if you have one handy, but the enemy sheets have stats like how much damage they do, how much their shield tokens block for them, what their base health is, and those we can, you know, let's say you go from region 1 to region 2, those values can change. So like the thief, you know, snipe attack will do its damage plus 4 or whatever like that, and in region 1 maybe the base value is only 2, so that's 6. You get to region 2, and then their base value might go up to like, you know, 4 maybe, and now they're doing 8 damage when they snipe you. So that's a way for us to scale the enemies as well. So we have like 2 things going on, so like 3 things. So the deck lets them have variability in their move set, and it's sort of tuned together to create, you know, I mean, that's the other thing too. Each of their decks has like this balance between them blocking and advancing, or maybe retreating, and ranged attacks, or attacks or that don't do damage but they target players and make them discard cards or gain negative effects. So they're all sort of tuned and balanced around like the enemy's like personality almost. Then that deck can evolve by us removing or adding cards. And then on top of that, we have these sheets that Brendan has on screen right now, where those base values of health, damage, and block can, as well as the rewards too, can change from region to region. You can see on top there too, where it says combat deck 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A. That's their deck for region 1. You get to region 2, and it might be some of those cards plus other ones. You know, you've taken out some of the easier ones, added some of the harder ones. So that's sort of the variability that we're sort of building into the system.
Yeah, cool. So let's jump into, you know, like I think while we're on enemies, we mentioned a little bit about replayability in the value portion of it, but maybe I can ask this question to both of you. And there's a couple, I know there's a couple of people in chat who have spent some time playing. Wyvern and Tom, I see you too. So feel free to kind of chime in with your answers, and I'll show it on the screen here. But when you're playing the game and we're doing this, what is the, you know, for you, where do you see the replayability coming from? I know there's different kind of threads, but, you know, Derek and Luke, when you think of replayability and threshold, what sticks out to you?
To me, it is the progression as you play through the game. I mean, we've got a really, really cool and interesting itemization system. You're not given access to all of the combo of skill cards available to you. You know, you have to earn them, you have to find them, you have to purposely work towards some of them. And I think, you know, pairing all of the options that are available through the items and the skill cards that those allow you to access, plus your class deck, really, I mean, I asked you the other day, Brendan, if we could try to, you know, create, I found out the number of permutations that are possible in this game, and I think it's
too many.
it is such a massive number that I don't even know we could fit it on the screen. It is, and that's just with one character. So I think going through and kind of finding that ultimate build, the thing that I find most fun. I'm also a very thematic guy, so I want to combine, you know, I want to combine like fire magic with my axe and all the brutality skills. So I want this like flaming axe wielder of kind of a theme for my character, and then I go back through and I do it differently with something else. Maybe I want to be a spellcaster with a shield, and I'm doing you know, a little bit of the opposite as well. And I think, you know, to me, it's the enjoyment of pursuing that, and then finding the best builds along the way, dealing with those challenges, and then you know, there's several other classes to try again.
Yeah. Quick math is, I think we have, with the new stretch goal, we have 6, so 72 unique skills in the core game. And how many uniques class cards per character? Because I know some have different max number of. Is it 10? 15?
I forget. Yeah, something like that. It's like 25 cards total.
25 cards total,
and I
but you know
think
you
two
can have
copies of a lot of them.
multiple pesky pings and ethereal shields. But
Mhm,
so
mhm.
just with like one character, right? You have 12-ish unique from your character class, but then multiples of those. So like, hey, how many of those do you have in your decks? Plus the option of 72 different cards that you could feed into a deck. I don't know. It's
And we only
that's
have a
where
deck minimum, right?
yeah,
So
the deck minimum's 10.
yeah.
There will be well, I guess technically right now there's no deck maximum in the rule book. There's probably
I think there's like a game limit, right? The number of
an
items that
efficient.
you get, the number of points that you
Yes.
have to spend.
Yeah.
There's a hard limit, but there's a lot of variability in their choice because you have skills that cost 1 or 2, and you have skills that cost 7 or so. And so you might want to gather a bunch of more cards. I think that's part of the fun as well. Is there's so many different build options. Size of your deck also matters, right? We have a really cool fatigue system. As the more you're cycling through your deck, the more fatigue you're taking, the closer you are to kind of dying, coming a bit more of a glass cannon. So there's just a lot of variety there. To me, that is the most fun part of it in terms of replayability. There's so much I want to try.
Something that I think we could highlight more too, actually, that I think is a unique part of the game that I didn't even come up with, is the memory system, which is the game remembering what actions you do.
The narrative element.
Yeah, well, it's not even the narrative so much as like it's a system for what you do in the game impacting other things in the game in totally unique ways. So it's not too different from if, say, you were playing a game like Earthborn Rangers, where you do something and you have a journal and you write down, remember that you did such and such. Arkham Horror uses that sometimes too. We have on our board slots for tokens. You don't have to write anything down. It's stored on your board. That's a part of the dual layer board system. You slot in these tokens and memories. I think right now there's still a number and it's either side A or B. But anything can reference that. So you may have a situation where, let's say you do a quest, and in the combat encounter for the quest, you don't, you beat it, but you don't fulfill the secondary objective to kill all the bandit enemies, right? And that tells you to, you add memory, 3A, right? And you don't know what that does, but totally unrelated to your quest, there may be some adventure card you draw later that asks like, oh, do you have memory, 11A? If you don't, like, oh, you fight, one bandit brute. But if you do, it's have that memory slotted in. It's like, oh, the bandits that got away last time, you're fighting all of them again now, right? So
yeah,
it's a really interesting system that I think it was a little bit later in development, way later compared to the combat stuff. So it's something we still are like going to do a lot of development work with, but like, I think it's a really cool system that I think is going to feed into a lot of the sense of like kind of poking around in the world and doing stuff and seeing like what things trigger or are unlocked by your earlier actions in the game,
by your encounters and kind of the results of the quests or the outcomes of your tests. I think one of the coolest things about it, we hinted on a little bit, a lot of narrative levers with it, right? A lot we can do narratively. That's fun. That's going to be awesome. But also it can just show up in simple ways, like make a test easier if you happen to have it, right? Because maybe you've trained with some character who gave you some knowledge of how to better pick locks, and now having this memory token, we can reference that very quickly in our kind of text line. And it's easier to do mechanical stuff as well, or it might, like Luke is saying, might change up a combat encounter in a significant way. But also a ton of narrative levers to pull with that I think we're very excited about. Because that's telling the story of what you've done in this game.
It's one of the things that maybe I should just do a playthrough of not doing any combat one day, where you're just kind of running around doing landmark actions and adventures and all these things that are not combat focused, because that's you can do that, which is kind of a fun thing. I'm gonna answer a few of these questions here. I'm not gonna try to say. O is asking, this game looks so sick. I love the art. The gameplay looks fun. Question: is there a mechanic to reduce grind or ways of making the same enemy different after your defeat? After you defeat it, say 4 to 6 times, for example. I'm going to say after you defeat it 4 to 6 times, for example. Yeah. So, we kind of talked about this a little bit. The first 2 missions, actually the first couple missions are very kind of MMO inspired vibes, where they're easy, and it's basically less than an hour per level. You level off the first one, you level off the second one, and then you have a third mission, and then after your third mission you're introduced to these kind of different faction quests, and in those faction quests, other enemy types are introduced into your kind of combat, into the combat board. And so kind of one thing is like you're not going to be fighting the same enemies over and over and over again, unless, well, no, you won't, right? It'll just be kind of different types of
the
enemies.
same combination of enemies.
Different combinations of enemies. So that's kind of the one thing. The other element is a lot of the scenario design is not just kill all enemies. There's escort missions. There's a bunch of different things. And I was talking to someone on Discord. It's like, this is actually one of those areas where I wish we had, I wish we had done a couple more passes on the dev side. Because I think there's things that Luke and I have thought about for different combat scenarios that we haven't implemented yet. Basically, because anytime you do something that does not kill all enemies, your complexity increases quite a bit, and the opportunity for the game breaking also increases with that complexity. Sorry, the complexity, not on the player's perspective, but on the designer's perspective. So it's actually like doing a simple escort mission. It's actually quite hard to design compared to, hey, do you see these 4 enemies? Kill those 4 enemies. And so off the top of my head, the different combinations of enemies, scenarios are different, and I for me that has kept it feeling fresh. Luke, I don't know if you had anything to add on that one.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good comment too, and I think I've seen other people who have played the TTS commenting on this as well. Is that the actual just sort of generic overworld random enemy encounters don't happen that often. If you're playing a little carelessly and just standing next to them standing adjacent at the end of your turns, you might have to fight a mob, but mostly it's something you can move around. Same with the encampment encounters, where it's sort of wave-based combat against random enemies. That's a self-selected. You choose to go do that if you want. If you're just following the main quest lines, those are all bespoke combat scenarios that, like Brendan is saying, all have different modifiers and interesting, rules. It might be a thing where like there's something, a zone is different somehow. There's cover in there, or it's part of the bandits' camp or something like that. Or it's a survival mission. There's enemies respawning. So there's a lot of different ways that the scenarios make each combat different or interesting with more layers to it. The very first one is just, hey, kill these enemies. And that's really, it's a tutorial mission. It's to sort of teach players the very basics of combat. So there's definitely the missions themselves adding to what you're doing in combat than just fighting the same enemies over and over.
Well, and I think it's also important to mention that like even the random combat encounters, so we do have bespoke designed ones with custom rules and scenario effects, but we have several random combat encounters, and these are variable experiences. And even just having a different combination, because we have separate combat maps as well, right? We have a double-sided smaller board. Each region has a larger board, and then of course there are threshold dungeon boards. But even different combinations of enemies and different layouts of the map, combat's not necessarily a puzzle, but the strategy and the tactics in which you go about resolving that combat changes immensely based on what makes it up. then you layer on, like Luke's talking about, kind of bespoke scenarios, different rules in it, and you have a lot of variety, a lot of interesting encounters that completely, your deck and your build, your character build may be really good in a certain, setup, but you encounter something slightly different, and all of a sudden you're struggling because you're all about range, and these guys are just swarming you, and that can even happen in the random kind of setup scenarios.
Yeah. No,
a
absolutely.
lot of our combat, actually, speaking of Brendan, you were mentioning influences earlier. I think early on we drew a lot of inspiration for the combat design from roguelikes, where there is a certain sort of amount of repetition. Yeah, there's a certain, or ARPGs even, running ARPG, dungeons or whatever. There's a certain amount of repetition, but like a lot of like what makes it interesting, the variability comes from what the player has decided to do with their decks and their build and how they've spec'd their character. Like, for example, playing Hades, something I've been doing recently. Like, you get like, do I do a run of Hades to fight the wretches in the first area for the millionth time? No, it's because I've got totally different boons this time and a different weapon, and it changes how combat flows.
Yeah.
So I think that's sort of where we've gone for, and like sort of the combat design is like, it's always testing your build against these enemies.
And I think it's very visceral and very engaging, right? Like combat in this game feels very active. You're doing what you want to do by playing the cards. You might have a really cool combo build that's drawing from your deck or drawing from your discard pile, and you have these awesome combination turns. It's very different than, say, a game in which you've got a good attack value, but you roll a dice, add it to that, tap a card, and you're done. This is very engaged. It's solving, where you want to be positioned in relation to the enemy, seeing what they're telegraphing for their next turn, factoring that into your decision, coordinating with your friends or your other players around the table. All of that creates a very, I think, visceral and actively engaged combat that, to me, makes every single encounter different and engaged and fun.
Yeah. A couple quick questions here.
Okay, I was going to answer Josh's question that you had on the screen earlier, because that's a quick one, which is just that you're going to gain, and Brendan, maybe you can confirm, the most experience from doing the quests.
Yes.
And so if you would want to optionally choose to engage in random encounters or the encampment wave encounters, it's kind of to get more loot, to sort of draw more options. Sort of, maybe you're going for like, oh, hey, I really wish I had a weapon that also had, Aegis on it, or Bladecraft. And it's like, you know what, I'll do this random encounter and get some loot from killing a thief and see if maybe, I get that. So, that's where you would maybe replay combat encounters, is if you want to try to, get more loot dice, roll more loot, get more money maybe. But, you're not going to fall behind in any way, really, from experience-wise, from, skipping some of that just random combat.
Yeah, exactly. Christian is asking a component question. They're talking about how many sleeves are necessary for the game and expansion. Are 7 packs enough? So stepping back, why do we offer sleeves in the game? Well, we are offering sleeves specifically for your character deck. So the character deck is a thing that starts small, 10 cards, and it grows as you get new items. This is how your character levels and gains new abilities. Maybe you get a new relic item that comes with a relic ability. So cool, you get a sleeve that title. All those different things that makes your character deck. We have that at 50 cards, and it's a TBD, right? If we need to increase the number of sleeves, like 10, we will. But
probably not. But
probably not. The only thing I was thinking of, Luke, is potential status effects. We want to make sure that there's no interesting things with like status effects, because anytime you have a status effect, it goes into your deck, and that's the thing that we're sleeving, or that we're offering a sleeve. And
the thing that you're shuffling.
That's the thing that you're shuffling. We've built our player trays to support sleeve player decks. The rest of the game, if you want to sleeve it, go for it. But but we're not technically supporting it as far as like our storage solutions and those different elements.
Right. We are including sleeves for the item cards because of the affix system.
Oh, yeah.
And that will be in the box.
But not for all item cards, just for...
Exactly. And again, those are meant to work with your player tray and fit into your player tray and be saved in your player tray.
Yeah. So, but hey, if you want to sleeve those Terror-sized quest cards, knock yourself out. We did, you can go and actually you can't. I was gonna say you can go in our Stone Saga pledge manager and purchase some Terror-sized sleeve cards. Wyvern answered this question about what I think makes the game replayable for him. It's the deck construction. Play 2 of the characters, so many combinations, skill cards, and I think what Wyvern has only played up to level 10. He's had a blast, and he's still looking at, or he hasn't looked at the new characters yet. So there's still 4 more characters that he can experience.
That he's also using a very good distinction there: deck construction versus deck building. I think our game allows you to construct a new deck every time you return to town in a rest. When you get new items, you can freely swap in and out your different choices and electives based on the points that you have to spend. It's not the you buy a card, it's permanently in there sort of system. You can swap it out as you get different items, and even if you have the same items and you just want to try different allocations of your points in different skills or cards of the same skills, you can do that as well when you go back to town and kind of do that rest action.
Great. Josh Kramer, while we're on the topic of sleeves, so will the enemy decks have sleeves? You shuffle them each encounter. Luke?
You do, but you need to be able to see both sides. So you would just need clear sleeves for those. And since that's something you can easily buy, probably cheaper than we would be offering them on Kickstarter, we don't have clear or Kickstarter getting found. We don't have clear sleeves. We just have the different art sleeves with art from Threshold. But you can get sleeves for those. You just need to go to your local game store.
Poker size cards.
Yeah, they're standard size. Yeah.
Standard American size. You Americans,
they're poker
Magic card sleeves.
LCG poker size.
D Kaiser is asking, are there any cards in sealed envelopes that you unlock as you progress through the game? No, we don't have any. There's secrets. Actually, if you open up the region book to the back, there's a list of secrets. So there's things that you can only get when you experience secrets. But there's no legacy elements in this game. So no envelopes get opened, torn away. I think we actually had a person comment who thought that they could only play through the 50-hour campaign once. And
right.
And we commented back in GameFound. It's like, hey, no, you don't have to throw the game away after you play through it once.
I don't know, Brendan. I might try to sneak in now like a foil. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no
I'm not doing that.
It was actually one of the earliest ideas. Maybe it was my idea, but I was like, hey, it would be so cool if every time you like get loot, you open up a TCG pack of cards.
That was an early idea, wasn't it?
Like pulling like loot cards. It'd be so fun, special the first time you do it, and then it's like, oh, and then what? there's always issues.
Well, anyone that's ever played a TCG and you're one of the players that have bought a ton of packs, at a certain point you're seeing so many of the same things. You're just ripping them, looking for one card onto the next one.
Yeah, Josh actually mentioned that Dragon Eclipse did that with Collector's Edition with card packs. I remember seeing that. Okay, I want to wrap up this conversation with with us talking a little bit about something I think there's been a bit of confusion around, and that's with our Endgame systems. So full disclaimer, we are, if you've played the TTS, we are in alpha. What that means is we're committing to another full year of hardcore development on Threshold before we send the files off to printer. That's why we have delivery set for April 2027, because we're not like hey, giving you like fake dates, or it's like, we have a lot of stuff done, and we're happy with what we have done, but we also recognize that we have a lot of left to do. One of those areas where we have a lot of refinement is in the end game, but something that we do like the idea of is the end game offers a unique level of progression. There's something that you'll be able to kind of level your experience. When I say an end game, let me kind of clarify a few things. There's the campaign experience, which is leveling your character from 1 to 40, completing the main storyline in all 3 of the regions, optional 4th region if you choose to do the 4th region. But it's completing the storyline. There's going to be an end to that story. That experience is roughly 40 to 60 hours long. And then that's from 1 to 40. When you get to 40, if you want to finish playing the game, cool, you can. If you want to restart from the beginning with a new character, absolutely you can. Or if you want to take your existing character and be like, hey, how far can I push this character build? And there's only going to be certain people who actually like doing this, but if you're one of them, you're going to resonate with this. It's like, how far can I take my character build, push it, and see what we can do by kind of increasingly will increasingly provide harder content for you to take your character and increasingly challenge it. A very good kind of analog example in a board game that's very different than ours, but I think that you this same kind of pushing experience. Sorry, my dog's barking. If you've ever played Spirit Island, Spirit Island has a bunch of scenarios that you can play, or actually it's kind of like the standard game. And then you open up the back of the box, and then you have these scenarios. And then there's this massive, at least just memory from the core box. There's this like table of like difficulty. If you want difficulty 4, you do scenario 1 with difficulty 3, blah, 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 blah. And basically it's like this never ending scale of difficulty where you can continually push yourself to try to achieve, victory, all these things.
Yeah.
Kind of think of that idea. And it's like, hey, we're going to offer that in two, currently we're thinking of 2 ways. One is like this big group multiplayer experience that we're calling raids. And the other is man,
Gauntlet.
why am I blanking on the name? Gauntlets is that's kind of like a around the table gauntlet. They're both like these are optional activities if you want to do. They'll both give you the same rewards, but they're different experiences. So currently, the design for gauntlets is you'll be tested. You'll start in town, in the main city in one of the 3 regions, and there will be a level 1 of said region, and level 1 will spawn a bunch of different encounters in across the region, and you have to complete these encounters before resting. So you kind of have this like, hey, how efficient can I be in these battles? And then you come back to town, you get some rewards, and there's some progression elements in between, kind of meta progression, kind of similar to, we mentioned Hades vibe. So that's kind of like this gauntlets. We're going to have a lot of levels per region. And so you can push yourself kind of continuously. How far can I go? How far can I go? How far can I go? On the other end, we have this idea for doing these raids, which we recognize are going to be kind of these special experiences, might not happen all the time, where if there's multiple boxes of threshold present, we can do these big kind of dungeons. We take our dungeon template and expand it for up to 12 players. So 3 tables concurrently playing dungeons at the same time, impacting each other's kind of outcomes. So it's, there's a general sentiment that some people have had. It's like, oh, hey, like, I don't want to do this. Okay, cool. You don't have to do it. This is like a couple pages in our encounter book that we'll include. It's not, we're not adding any extra components specifically for the raids. There will be components for the end game, but you can experience those elsewhere. And so if you don't want to touch it, you don't have to. And if you want to experience something like raids, you would go and do a dungeon, because the dungeon format is very similar to the raid, but the raid is just scaled kind of sort of vertically, scaled laterally. And so we're taking an existing concept, an existing system that we have, which is a dungeon, and then we're just making it a little bit bigger, and we're calling them raids.
With the unique, cross effects of what happens in one table or one room
Yes,
affects the other, and so on.
and so, if I step back, let's say I single-handedly level 3 characters to 40. I've been a solo player, and I'm just leveling all of my characters to 40. Love it. You could technically play 3 different tables. Well, you could do them like not at the same time, probably, but you could do one room with one character, one room with another character, another room with the other character, and each of those rooms could impact each other's rooms. You could technically do that, but like, sure, like we're not going to stop you from doing that. There's probably more fun ways to play the game, but maybe that's really fun. So that,
Yeah, well, I mean, I think
yeah.
I think a lot of it is we wanted to try to offer something that is an opportunity to get a bunch of people playing shared content together. There are a few other games out there that have similar ideas and they're kind of extracurricular events, and sometimes they're officially supported or not. But these kind of epic scale encounters is something that we want to see if we can just provide an opportunity for several groups of people to get together and challenge their builds, challenge all those hours they spent perfecting their characters into this content. But yes, structurally, the way that it is going to be built will most likely be very possible for you to just on your own run one, follow the rules and effects that affects the next table, do that one, do it again for the next one, and just kind of solo that dungeon or that raid, so to speak. I want to also just to touch back on just Endgame as a whole. I think it's something that we should mention is that it's not just a really enduring test of your build. By the time you get to Endgame, you're likely not feeling like your build is complete because you're still a lot of what you've done perhaps up to that point has gotten you through the main quest line, through the 1 to 40 experience. But when you start facing these increasingly challenging content in the gauntlet or the raids, you might find that you need to find a couple of different items to really min-max your build or to make it more efficient for that particular content. Or you need to revisit the drawing board and reconfigure your spending. I don't think the game necessarily ends at Endgame. It's just about, like Brendan said, expanding and pushing your build further, but you can continue earning and acquiring new gear and finding ways to even enhance it, the ideas that you've put into place.
Yeah. Luke, anything to add? I think that covers most of it.
No, yeah, I think that covers most of it. I think also something you mentioned that maybe is good to iterate is that a raid. When we say the raid, this is not something that we're spending, tons of development time on, and it has special components or anything like that. It's effectively expanding the dungeon experience into a larger format. And so like to get that same experience with a smaller group, with I shouldn't say small, a regular sized group, solo 1 to 4, it would be the dungeons in the game already. I don't want to downplay what's being offered in the core set, not even Endgame, not even multiplayer. The dungeons are, Brendan described what the gauntlets are. The dungeons are effectively gauntlets. They are going back to almost some of the, roguelike inspiration, where you go into the dungeon, you have a combat encounter, you get a short rest, you get another combat encounter, you get a short rest, and you do a boss fight. You have to do all of that without going back to town. So we have a high level combat, not high level, a challenging combat experience. In region 1, in region 2, in region 3, and so players are going to get to experience our vision for that and that kind of gameplay just in the regular core set experience. This the end game stuff Brendan is talking about with gauntlets, that's an extra challenge for players who've gotten that far and want to keep playing. The raid thing we're talking about, that's, do you want to try to get a group of 6 to 12, people together to all jam the game together? That's a cool thing we're offering, but you're not like totally missing out on that experience by not doing it, because it's just an upscaled, asynchronous, simultaneous dungeon experience.
Mm-hmm.
So again, not to undersell what's already in the core set. We're basically, the end game and the raid stuff is all just built off of what we're already offering there.
Yeah, just a new way to experience more.
Yeah.
Josh had a good question about just the enemies. So there's a little side conversation happening in the chat. There's currently 12 enemies in the core box, additional 3 in the expansion. And Josh is asking if the expansion characters will get added into the core box experience so that you can kind of fight those expansion enemies. Sorry, not characters, enemies. Fight the expansion enemies in regions outside of just Ridgeback Mountains. The answer is yes. There's right now, like, we will make a way for those to be introduced as a part of the enemy bag, which you draw from there anytime you do encampments or random combat encounters. Quests, because quests combats are tailored, it's a little bit different. Quests are like they're designed and set and at kind of specific levels and challenges and all that stuff. So you'll fight those Ridgeback mountain enemies a lot. Not all, like not exclusively, but a lot in the Ridgeback Mountains with the quest lines. But you will be able to fight them elsewhere throughout the rest of the game.
I will just chime in to say there are some quests, and I think we'll continue to design more that do draw from the random enemy bag, same bag you use for the random encounters. So that's not to say there won't be quest encounters that utilize any enemies we've added to the game via expansions.
That's a good point.
I want to answer one of these questions. Mitch is asking, with MMO like WoW in mind, should threshold audience expect expansions that increase the level cap? I think we've talked about this, not at length, because it's pretty open, I think, right now for us. I think we've talked preliminarily about ways in which we could, yes, expand the level cap and kind of grow that end, or as we introduce new regions and new content, it all exists in the 1 to 40 or then supporting Endgame. And I think we have ideas that run around both. And I think a lot of what we'll choose to do there will be a result of the feedback we get from the community and where most players are leaning in terms of which they feel is going to be the most enticing. But I think there are levers that we're interested in doing both. And it's both on the table. I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that or not.
Nope. We gotta see how core box is received. That always determines whether you continue to develop for for a product line, right? Hey, do people like the product? Do people buy the product? Okay, great. We'll make more things for the product.
Well, I think one thing I'll comment on here is just that as we develop it, I think we're already sort of seeing this, that as we look at what we've developed so far, that the skill and player card system, reward system, is going to be pretty finely tuned to like what the maximum like level is. And so if we were to increase that level cap, we're going to have to like increase kind of all of the possible content there. I think what we're already sort of looking at, and you can see this in like the character expansions, those each add a new skill line as well. So I think there's probably, it's more likely that we do sort of lateral expanding, where we continue to increase the options that players have within the 1 through 40 experience. Yeah. That's not to say we wouldn't, do something that, hey, here's an expansion that does increase the level cap, and we are adding cards to like, the base character skills. But I think it's more likely that we expand laterally.
Yeah. Or the easy thing is you don't increase the level cap, you just introduce an ascendancy level or something, right? It's like
Right,
basically
like
like a subclass or something, right? So it's like, hey, great,
right.
you can spec into, you have your Mystic, cool.
Yeah,
You can
yeah.
choose one of these kind of subclasses that you can spec into. But
Yeah, I mean that's easy. That's definitely easier to expand. Yeah, that way.
yeah, and so you could technically be leveling up, but not be like you're not level 41, you're level 40 and level 1 in this thing.
Prestige classes.
Prestige.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the just adding a single skill deck to the game fundamentally changes the experience in really interesting ways, because that one deck can combine, you can find builds with all the other skill cards available to you. And it just opens up the world of possibilities each time we think about adding an additional set of skills.
It's great. I'm gonna close by answering Josh's questions. So we had a couple questions about crafting. I think we'll talk more about crafting in a future update and future Q&A. Save it. It's a little bit longer of a conversation. But Josh is asking just a question about expansions, crowdfunded, or will you make expansions for this game that are not crowdfunded? That will come straight to retail. I'll be honest. Threshold is only coming to probably the hobbyist of hobby store retail. These are people who buy directly from us at a much higher price than they would buy from a distributor, because they recognize kind of there's an audience for crowdfunding games post crowdfunding. Very small portion. I don't think Threshold's going to go in mass distribution. I guess Stars of Icarus ended up there a little bit. You can get stars in some stores, but sorry, not mass distribution. It's still hobbyist distribution. So mass would be like Barnes and Noble, those types of stores. It's not Threshold. It's too expensive for those stores. It is primarily going to be a crowdfunding activity for the foreseeable future. And expansions we do will come first to crowdfunding. If they come to other stuff afterwards, cool, but primarily through crowdfunding. We make no promises that anything is available post crowdfunding anywhere. Yeah, cool. Hey, Luke, Derek, thanks so much for joining me, and thank you all for asking questions, for being excited about Threshold. We're thrilled about the game. I really think it's something special, something that's going to be lots of fun for you if you want to play it now on TTS or when it delivers. Great. Hey, well, take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.